things are always going to need to be made. There needs to be people there to make things. So we're going to be in trouble in another 10 years if there's not some younger people coming through, and that's again something that we'll talk about later. Well, like I said, it was a bit of a shock to the system to begin with, I think, because as I mentioned earlier, when there's two of you, you can share the responsibilities, and then when all of a sudden it's on your head, if something goes wrong, it's effectively on you. If you're willing to make short-term sacrifices, you're going to be in a better place longer term.
Hi everyone, you're listening to the Unrelenting Drive podcast, and before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know I started this podcast because over the years I've had hundreds of the most inspiring conversations of my life with small business owners, and they really helped me grow and scale my own business and get my mindset right even when times were really tough. I wanted to capture those conversations and make them available to other small business owners who are following in my footsteps, and I've just got a small request. If you enjoy this episode, if you find it really inspiring, if you find it helps you in your own business, then please just like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more subscribers we get, the more we can invest in making the podcast better. So enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, you're listening to the Unrelenting Drive podcast, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Michael Moyers from Alpha Performance Fabrication. Michael, please tell us about what you do.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks very much for having me. It's my first experience of being on a podcast, so it's really exciting for me, so thanks very much for this. But so we're based in Wellingborough, so not far from here. Effectively, we're in manufacturing in the automotive industry, so we manufacture a lot of performance parts for the automotive industry, whether that be individual clients or more what we're doing now is working with sort of small to medium-sized British sports car manufacturers. So we make a lot of their exhaust systems, their cooling products, fuel tanks, things like that. So it's quite a niche sort of specialist thing to do.
Michael, that's absolutely amazing, and I really want to learn more about that business a bit later on in the podcast. But to start with, actually, if you could just help us understand, how did you actually get into the world of work? Where did you go from education?
So basically, obviously I went through secondary school in Towcester. From there, I did a 3-year apprenticeship, a modern motorsport apprenticeship in welding and fabrication. Did my apprenticeship at a fabrication company based at Silverstone Circuit. Really, really enjoyed that. I spent a good 5-6 years there. I learned a lot from some really good people there. And I went from there, moved on to a couple of other companies, learning different aspects of fabrication. So, for example, in my apprenticeship, I was learning a lot about the cooling products and working with aluminium, in specifically aluminium. And then moved to a couple of other companies to really just increase my knowledge, really, to be totally honest. So I sort of experienced fitting roll cages, making exhaust systems, fuel tanks, all that sort of thing. So that was my sort of work experience until I think it was mid to late 20s, and that's when we decided to jump and begin business of our own.
Well, so that's really interesting. What's the difference between fabrication and manufacturing?
Manufacturing, you could say, is more broad, because there can be machining, for example, or 3D printing. Whereas fabrication is more, it's with metal, it's with aluminium, stainless steel, mild steel, that sort of thing. It was really interesting to spend, a good 10 years of my working life, just really, I didn't work for that many people. It was 3 or 4 different companies, really good companies. I really enjoyed it as well. And to be honest, I never actually planned to go into business, if you know what I mean. It sounds silly looking back at it now, because I always enjoyed where I worked, and I was happy. And I was always working within a company where there was options, to grow and to move up the ladder, if you like.
You mentioned that you were in maybe 3 businesses over 10 years. Do you feel comfortable sharing what those businesses were?
Yeah, so I did my apprenticeship at docking engineering at Silverstone. So a lot of people that are listening and watching this anyone that's got a motorsport background as such will know who that is. They're quite a renowned company, so I was very lucky to get involved there. Initially, I was actually planning to follow in my dad's footsteps, because my dad was a race car engineer, race car mechanic, and he worked in various different formulas up the ladder, all the way up to Formula One, where he actually worked on James Hunt's McLaren. So that was really interesting. So I was planning on following his footsteps, and Dockins had a race team next door. So I initially went there to try and get a job as a mechanic and follow my dad's footsteps. But at the time, there wasn't any opportunities there. But they said there is an opportunity to do an apprenticeship next door in the fabrication shop. So again, I'd never really tried that in detail before, but I thought I'll give it a go. And one, I really enjoyed it, and two, I just took to it like a duck to water, to be honest with you. It just felt really natural to me, and it was really interesting. So that's how that all began.
Amazing. So, and that was how long were you at that company?
I think that was 5. My apprenticeship was 3 years long, but I think I was there for 5 or 6 years.
And what apprenticeship were you doing? Like,
that was what they call a modern motorsport apprenticeship, but it was targeted at fabrication and welding. There was lots of other things you could do. You could do a little bit of composites and other things, but it was mainly engineering, fabrication, and welding. So that was really, really interesting. So it seems to be, I wouldn't say a dying trade now, but certainly in the last sort of 10 years, it definitely feels like there's been like a missed generation of apprentices. So it's definitely something I feel, there should be more backing for it, if you know what I mean. That people, it'd be nice to see more people going down that route.
I know what you mean. Like when I was like one of the first jobs I had after university, I was at Barrett Homes doing finance there, and it was in 2008, like at height of the recession, really, and like all of their I don't think all of them, but a lot of the graduate roles got cancelled. A lot of the apprenticeships just got cancelled. Like they kept their existing people, obviously, but like they slowed down all the new apprenticeships, and I think it was industry wide, and actually it was like economy wide as well. And I don't know if the next recession, when it comes, people have learnt the lessons from that. But actually, what happened was people just stopped training apprenticeships in trades, and then like now we're at a place where actually we're struggling with tradespeople because there's not enough of them.
Yeah, it's a direct it's a direct reason for why we're in the position we're in now.
Yeah.
So like you said, we should learn our lessons from it, because with modern technology and everything else, like you can understand. I've got a 9-year-old son, and he loves playing on computer games and stuff like that. But not everybody wants to do that sort of thing. A lot of people want to use their hands. They want to be physical. So I think we definitely need to, like you say, learn from that and start pushing more people towards apprenticeships, because it's incredibly important. Because things are always going to need to be made. There needs to be people there to make things. So we're going to be in trouble in another 10 years if there's not some younger people coming through. And that's again something that we'll talk about later. Is when we expand again, I'd love to take on a couple of apprentices to get our hands on a couple of really enthusiastic young people that we can hopefully provide a great future to.
Yeah, I guess like and developing on that's got to be an industry-wide solution, hasn't it?
Yes.
Because if there's one firm in an industry doing the responsible thing and maintaining their apprenticeships and training programs, then and the others don't, then all that's going to happen is the other firms are going to come along, like 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, and take those apprentices.
Yes.
And there won't. So I guess there's got to be some kind of collaboration, really.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's really, really important, and action needs to be taken now, really. So if we can do our part by by training a couple of young people, then that's what we're very passionate about that. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, for us, I guess apprenticeships in the accounting industry, like my firm's going to be 10 years old in January, and maybe I can't really comment on going all the way back to the last recession, but what I can comment is back to 2014, and I think like 2014, all the way up to COVID, we've always found it relatively straightforward to get apprentices, especially for accounting. Where we've post-COVID, like especially last year and a half, we've struggled a bit because I think that it's the national. I think it's the rise in inflation that's caused that, because I guess an apprenticeship is a really good opportunity for people, but apprentices do tend to get paid less than if you just went into employment, because there's that educational element.
Absolutely, but it's a long game, isn't it? The apprenticeship is a long game. If you're willing to make short-term sacrifices, you're going to be in a better place longer term, without a doubt.
And I think, like, I'm coming across more and more people where they just got this financial pressure, and young people where they've got this financial pressure. And what that means is they're more likely to just go work down the pub or the supermarket for an extra £3 or £4 an hour.
Absolutely, and you can understand that, as a short-term solution. But I just think, as a longer-term solution, if you do a 3-year apprenticeship course and you work your way up from there, by year 10, the people that you associate with that are working in the pub, you're going to be, on a completely different level. So again, it's short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah, I do. I mean, at an individual level, I understand that. I think the government does need to do something to, like, the government's generally been quite good with apprentices, especially over COVID, and trying to get more people into work through apprenticeships. But I think, one of the shameful things is, or one of the big shames about, like, COVID is, the government got really good at supporting business, and I just sometimes think if they didn't just, like, take their foot off the pedal afterwards, they came up with some really good ideas. Like, the bounce back loan scheme. I know it was abused, like, pretty horrifically in some cases, but actually the bounce back loan scheme, there was like a lot of businesses used it to take that next step into growth, and
absolutely,
and having a 2.5% like loan rate, whereas now I think I was talking to a commercial finance broker earlier, and he's saying, like, most of the loans that are available for businesses, even if they're secured with a personal guarantee, they're coming out at 15%.
Yes, it's crazy. It just makes things very, very difficult, especially for businesses that have aspirations to grow, like ourselves, where we are now. We want to make that next step. We need to move into bigger premises. I want to take more people on, invest in more equipment, and that all takes finance. And I just think that there should be other things in place to try and help us do that. Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Because it's a massive move, for where we are now. I'd like to purchase somewhere. That's what we're looking at doing next. But again, it's with how expensive even commercial real estate is at the moment. It's and the availability as well. If you look at the market, there's barely anything available, and when it does come to market, it's snapped up immediately. Usually, from what I've seen in the last year, by sort of investment firms and pension funds and things like that. So it's going to make the next step very, very challenging. That's for sure. But as business owners, that's how it is, isn't it? There's many, many hurdles that you've got to jump. So,
well, I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying, like, Northamptonshire is one of the best places to start business, but one of the worst places to scale one. And one thing that commonly comes up when I'm talking to people is the lack of commercial premises, and that seems to be consistently coming up at the moment. I think for businesses that are in a good office space, that's great, but actually, I don't know why it is. Maybe a lot of commercial premises did get converted into housing.
That's correct. Yeah.
But the other side is, like, you've got loads of empty commercial premises, like in the town centre, for example, but no one wants to move their business to the town centre because there's not enough parking. And I think there's just been, in general, a lack of planning that's gone into making Northamptonshire a home for, like, medium-sized businesses. But hopefully people start recognising that and then dealing with it. But
I hope so. Absolutely.
I guess, like, I think we were talking about it before the podcast, and we're essentially saying when you get that premises, sometimes it's hard to get a premises that's just right. It's either too big or too small. And quite a lot of the time, you just got to go in for one that's too big. And I think business owners, well, if if they get a premises that's too big, they can always sublet parts of it.
Yeah,
They've got
there's always options there. But I've been looking for the last sort of 12 months or so, and it appears that there's lots of places around the size that we're in now, or absolutely massive. There doesn't seem to be anything in between. There seems to be more and more new builds going up now, but when you look at how much they want for rent or even to purchase them, a lot of them there's no option to purchase them. But even to rent, the costs are just astronomical, absolutely astronomical, and it's going to make the next step really, really difficult. But again, like I said earlier, there's always going to be hurdles, and it's just another one that we're going to have to jump.
Yeah, I think businesses have really got to be on the ball with inflation at the moment. I know. Well, I think most businesses don't even look at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, but then even the ones that do, it's misleading. Like the Consumer Price Index is aimed at like homeowners and like aimed at like renters and members of the public, and it reflects the challenges with buying groceries and fuel and renting or mortgages. What it doesn't do is really go into the intricacies of running a small business, and actually what business owners have to do is really understand their own cost base and the changes and developments in that cost base.
Absolutely.
And not just that, the potential cost base, because if you're pricing and quoting for a new customer, you've got to think, you can't just change the price overnight after they've joined up. So you've got to think about what's going to happen over the next year.
Correct. Absolutely right. Again, that's I'm very grateful that I've got an incredible team of 6 behind me. So we're putting more and more processes and procedures in place to make sure that we're prepared for things like that as well. So we've got really good systems in place. Hannah, who works for me, she's been absolutely fantastic. We do some very in-depth job analysis sheets, when jobs are complete and when we're quoting things like that. So I think it's really important that one thing I didn't have a good enough understanding of, especially I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, was understanding the numbers within the business. And it's only since I've had business coaching the last couple of years that I've really doubled down on that and really focused on making sure that what weaknesses I have, I focus on and get a better understanding of.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So before you started business coaching, how big was the business?
So we were, it was normally between 3 and 4 people. So in the last couple of years, we've scaled up to 6. But like I said, with the space that we have now, that's us at capacity, unfortunately, until we can find a bigger premises.
Is that because, and are all those staff office-based?
No, not at all. No, workshop-based. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's Hannah in the office that... like I said, does an absolutely incredible job, and there's 5 fabricators in the workshop, including myself. I'm still very much on the tools. Again, that's something my business coach, if he watches this, he'll be saying you shouldn't be doing that, which I totally understand. But I'm still very much on the tools to a certain degree. But now I have, like I said, now I'm very grateful to have such a good team behind me. Yeah. It means I can come and do things like this with you without worrying about what's going on back at the workshop, because I know that they've got it all under control. So I understand that in order to grow the business effectively, I need to step away from that slightly and do more things that a business owner should be doing. Networking, things like this, going, touting for new business, going to see existing clients, more things that, I know I should be doing them. But as you probably experienced, it's very difficult to transition from one area to the next because it's quite scary. Yeah. Yeah.
So Michael, I guess I'm just trying to keep everything in like a linear order time-wise. You finished your apprenticeship, which lasted about 3 years, I believe. Then what did you do after? Did you continue in the same firm?
So for a couple more years I did, I stayed at Docking Engineering for about 6 years. Then I moved to a company in Banbury, RS Fabrications. That was learning a lot of exhaust systems, roll cage installations, things like that.
Who uses roll cages, like the police?
No, roll cages in safety devices. Yeah. As in, so for example,
so if your car gets flipped, it doesn't crush.
Yes. Yeah,
that's mainly police cars, isn't it? And like rally cars or something?
Yeah, rally cars, a lot of motorsport orientated,
okay.
Racing cars and things like that. They all have roll cages and safety devices in. So that was a really fun place to work. I still stay in touch with Russell now. Like I said, I've always enjoyed where I've worked. And I went from working at RS Fabrications to a place in Bedford, Palmer Sport. And I ended up making a lot of suspension components and things like that for a big batch of race cars that we were building to go out to Dubai. Okay. So that was really interesting. Yeah. And then at that point, there was somebody that I had met during my apprenticeship, and we'd always stayed in touch. And he had gone self-employed, and I was at a position when, although I was happy, I was really, really happy, working for somebody. The discussions began like, well, should we start something together? And that's where the journey began, really. So, so like I said, we started.
Is it just you at the moment, or do you have a business partner?
No, just me now. Okay. So there is a background story to it. Yeah. So I got into business, like I said, with a friend of mine. I think we got to year 8 or 9, something like that. And naturally, people, we all change, don't we? People change. Yeah. People want different things. Our mindsets changed, and we just weren't really aligned anymore. So we had to have a conversation, a very uncomfortable, difficult conversation over Christmas, literally between Christmas and New Year, where I said, I want to keep going, but I want to steer this myself. So we come to an arrangement, and to be honest, it's just from there, it's just gone from strength to strength. It was although it was a very difficult time, it was necessary, and it's proved to have been the right thing to do.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And why did you actually start out in business in the first place? Because I think you mentioned you had some initial conversations with a business partner, but what was it that you were both looking for? What was your dissatisfaction with your current position? Hi, it's Nishi here, and before we continue with the rest of the podcast, I just want to take a few seconds to explain what we do. We're a firm of accountants and business advisors, and we are really passionate about helping people grow and scale their own businesses and achieve the lifestyle they deserve. To do this, we've created a series of resources on our website, unrelentingdrive.com. So once you've got a few minutes after this episode, it's definitely worth checking that out. And just a quick reminder, if you do enjoy this episode, just remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe.
Yeah, so like I said to you earlier, I was always very happy within the places I was employed at. Always enjoyed the work. I always made sure that I was, working for a company where there was opportunities to grow, opportunities to learn new things, like I said, it's we got to a point where my now ex-business partner was self-employed. The discussions were started about doing this, but like I said to you earlier, I never actually had plans in my life to start a business. It just kind of happened. We just had initial conversations, and I was like, well, I've got my own contacts. You've got your own contacts. Why don't we get a small unit together, bring them together, and see how we get on? So that's how it all began, really. And it was growing and growing and growing. Like I said, just to a point where we were really no longer aligned. What happened. So again, it's very difficult position to be in. I'm sure there's lots of partnerships that flourish and last a lifetime. This one just wasn't meant to be, unfortunately.
And do you feel part of the reason for the breakup was there wasn't enough focus on your collective goals, like during the partnership?
Yeah, I think it was lots of different things, to be honest with you. But I am and always have been very motivated, driven. I know what I want. I've always been a grafter. I've always worked incredibly hard. It just got to a point where it became clear that I wanted to drive forward, this way. And fortunately, it felt as if he didn't want us, to do that. So it was unfortunate, but like I said, it was certainly the right thing to do, because since that point, like I said, we've moved to bigger premises. I've been able to employ more people, and it's just gone from strength to strength.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And okay, so you started out in business. What were the was it the current business that you've got at the moment?
Yeah. So basically, how it worked was, like I said, we were in business together. We had 2 or 3 employees. When we split, I managed to take control of all of the equipment, keep everybody on, rebrand under Alpha Performance Fabrication, and push forward from there. So it was, like I said, it was very uncomfortable. It was very difficult, but looking back, it was something that needed to happen. And like I said, the trajectory that we're on now is just, it's just even with all the difficulties with inflation and everything else, we're still managing to grow year on year. So I think we're certainly doing a lot of things right. We're certainly not perfect, and we never will be, but we're definitely doing a lot of the right things. And as I'm sure you've experienced, as a successful businessman yourself now, it's as you grow and the business grows, things have got to change, processes have got to change, the way you do things have to change. And I think a lot of it's down to my business coaching as well, to be honest with you, getting a better understanding of what makes a business tick and how important having processes and procedures in place are as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so important. So what did the early years of your business look like? What were your challenges back then?
So this is year 4 of Alpha Performance Fabrication. So obviously when COVID hit, that was incredibly difficult for everybody. But because we're in manufacturing, we were actually, although there was a period of time when I had to furlough everybody, that period didn't last very long, because we're in manufacturing. Like I say, some things can't stop. Things still need to be made. Things still need to move forward. So it wasn't actually that long until I was able to get everybody back, and we picked up where we left off.
So, Michael, when you started Alpha Performance Fabrication, what did the early years look like? So that was about 8 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. So the very, very early years. Again, like I was always on the understanding that I'm a trained fabricator welder, but I'm not a businessman. So back, when you start the business, I was very clear that I don't know much about business as such. I'm a fabricator. So I'm very, I feel like I'm very good at making parts. But with regards to running a business, I was quite uneducated. So that was a very, very steep learning curve. Just learning, doing things like invoices and VAT returns and dealing with customers, quoting people, things like that. That was all something that I'd not done before. And, I think the best way to learn things like that is just to dive in, to be honest with you. Just dive in head first. You can do other things. You can read lots of books. You can listen to lots of podcasts like yourself and learn lots of things. But there's no substitute for actually doing it. So I think, that was a big moment for me, where it was just like, oh my God, this, I now own a business. I really need to learn more things about actually running a business effectively.
And how did you go about learning those things?
Again, like I said, it was reading lots of books, listening to lots of podcasts, and like I said, physically doing it, actually doing it.
What's your favourite podcast? You don't have to say this one, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've only just recently started listening to yours, but I'd say I really enjoy, like we spoke on the phone, I really enjoy James Sinclair. Listening to him.
We were talking about that, and I was like,
yeah.
I like the James Sinclair stuff. I struggle to watch it a little bit because he
dives
jumps
from one.
around
Yeah,
a lot,
he does.
and
Yeah.
I feel like if I finish like a hard day of work and then I get into that, I feel like doubly exhausted.
Yeah.
But James Sinclair, it's amazing what he's done, especially
absolutely, especially recently. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's really embraced the content marketing.
Yes.
I loved his video about going from £0 to £1 million during COVID.
Yeah.
Like where he built that farm shop. I thought that was really inspiring.
Yeah.
And I think actually one thing I do really like about James Sinclair is he puts things into a scope.
Yes.
He puts it into scale for you.
Yes.
It seems, perspective.
It seems very real. It seems very, very real. One I listened to of his, it was fairly recently, to be honest. It was only a short video. It was only about 10 minutes long. But it was all about how entrepreneurs, businessmen, whatever you want to call them, we're wired differently. How we're not like everybody else. It's just it was struggling to put it into words, but it was just like, why do we do this? Why do we push ourselves so much? Why do we make ourselves so uncomfortable? Why do we go through the pain? And I really related to that. I watched it and I was just like, you've literally hit the nail on the head. Like, because a lot of it doesn't make sense, does it? You go through so much hardship. It's so difficult. Any sane person would give up, certainly after a period of years. So I think when he said we're just wired differently, I was just like, do you know what? It's just you're absolutely right.
Well, and that raises one of the other challenges business owners have, because it's quite a lonely occupation for a lot of people.
Incredibly. Yeah.
I think I still can't remember where I read the statistic, but when you're when you're self-employed, you're 1 out of 6 people, and when you're a business owner, you're 1 out of 6 of those self-employed people.
That's right.
So you'd have to talk to 32 adults to to essentially find someone that's going through what you're going through and actually talk to them. And I think that's something people have got to understand, because that, to get ahead in business, you've got to build that community around you. You've got to have that team anyway.
Absolutely, and that's why I like going to a lot of seminars and things like that as well. I'm actually going to one of James Sinclair's in London in September, because then you're surrounded by like-minded people that you can really relate to, because some might be way ahead of you in your journey, some might be a little bit behind, and you've always got some common ground to talk about. That I find really interesting. But the biggest thing for me is now having a really effective, high performing team. That's been massive for me, absolutely massive.
I guess your team can be like your support network to some extent as well, but there's always got to be a level of separation, I think.
There always has to be. Has to be that little bit of separation. But it's like you said, it's incredibly lonely. It's very, very lonely. It is. It's incredible amount of hours. People, I just don't think people fully understand the sacrifices that you have to make. The hours that you've got to put in. I mean, especially in the early days, you can, in my opinion anyway, you can forget about having a social life and relationships and things like that. I just don't personally. Especially in the first, year 1 to 5, that all your focus is business, and that's it. That is it. That is your life.
It's hard to switch off as well.
It's very hard to switch off. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's so difficult. It's incredibly competitive. It's incredibly competitive as well. So it's I just think it's very important who you surround yourself with. That's for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess. Yeah, you're an average of 5 people you surround yourself by, and it means you do have to be. You've got to be selective, but also that hidden in that statement is a comment about like diversity in your network as well. because actually, to be an average without bringing it down the average, you would need people that are strong in different areas, and then and that's how it works, I guess. But I completely resonate with that. I think by the way, I guess the podcast isn't about James Sinclair, but one of the things actually that watching some of his content really does help me with, like, in terms of mindset, is just the scale of the investments he makes. Like, buying those big top tents for the garden centre and what were they, like £25 each? £25,000 each or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and then I come across business owners that are struggling to pay, like, that don't want to spend like £20 a month on accounting software, for example. And it does kind of put things into perspective. It's like, people that really want to grow and scale a business, they're willing to. They know what that business is worth on the other side.
Absolutely,
so put in.
It's a really, really long game. A really long game, and I just think I think entrepreneurship it's certainly been made to look more glamorous than it actually is, especially with social media in the last 10 years and things like that. I think if people if people understood, how much sacrifice you go, how much pain you go through, the heartache, everything that comes with it. Like I said, most people wouldn't do it. They certainly wouldn't survive. That's for sure. I think you've got to be made of different stuff to be able to come through.
I think once you learn the basics of business and the formula behind business, then ultimately the second time round you do it, and the third time round you do it, if you want to do it for the third time. But you can get further ahead much faster.
Yes, agreed.
There's if I, like, it took me almost 10 years. We're almost 10 years now, but I could probably get to the same point with what I've learned and developed. I could have done that in about 2 years, I guess.
Yes, just because of all the lessons that you've learned previously.
Exactly,
Totally.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the first 8 years really came to fruition about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, I think I'd know just what to do on day one. I'd know how long things would take to get done. I'd know how long things like marketing would take to pay off. I know what to focus on, how to build that funnel. I guess. And you'll get that acceleration in your development, really, won't you? And you're probably starting to see that.
I think in our journey, that is where we're at now. Where that's just starting to accelerate. So it's certainly a very exciting. It's a very difficult time to be in business, but I think it's, you got to look at these things positively. Probably one thing that I'm guilty of, in fact I know I'm guilty of, is not looking back and not reflecting enough.
Is that just because you haven't had time to?
There's probably a bit of that, and I'm quite stubborn with I'm focusing on what's ahead of me, not necessarily what's behind, but I think I definitely should spend more time looking at what I have achieved. I as well as knowing where we want to go. I should certainly I think I should spend some more time reflecting on on what we've done, not just in business but in lots of areas. Going back to the beginning a little bit, I've been around motorsport my whole life, and I race cars semi-professionally as well, and I'm proud that I've won a lot of races, a couple of really quite big prestigious races, and it's just talking about reflection. I never really think about what we've actually done or what we've achieved. So I think I think it's important to spend a bit more time doing that. I guess
the first few years were about upskilling. And you mentioned some really interesting stuff about your involvement in motorsport as a driver, and I'd love to touch on that in a bit. But so the first few years, and that was where you had your partner, and then you were learning things, but you were really getting stuck in. You're both working really long hours, I guess, because you're doing the day job, but you're also
absolutely
finding
juggling
customers
everything
and invoicing and all that kind of stuff, and then really you've been following these podcasts, and they're giving you the information you need to really be a business owner.
Yes.
And then And then I guess you went your separate ways from your business partner. And how did how did business change for you once you were on your own then?
Well, like I said, it was a bit of a shock to the system to begin with, I think, because as I mentioned earlier, when there's two of you, you can share the responsibilities, and then when all of a sudden it's on your head, if something goes wrong, it's effectively on you. But I don't see that as a negative thing. I see that as I actually see that as quite a good thing, to be honest. And I've touched on it a couple of times in the conversation so far, but I'm very lucky and grateful that I've got such a good team around me. It makes my life a lot easier. I think it's taken me probably too long to understand that it's okay to delegate as well. I've got a team of 6 people, and it's something my guys will even turn around and say to me, it doesn't have to be you that has to do everything, and it's just getting past that understanding that I've got to let my people flourish. I need to put my trust in them, and I do completely. So it's just that I found quite difficult to begin with. But I think in recent years, certainly in the last 12 to 18 months, I felt a lot more comfortable and a lot more happy to just let my team do what they're there for and to do what they're good at. They all they'll probably laugh when they watch this, but I know they all enjoy it as well. So it's they're all doing. I make sure it's a fun atmosphere to work in as well.
What does your team look like? As in, what are the roles?
So again, it's relatively straightforward. And again, it's something when we expand again, I need to put a more clear structure in place. But there's effectively me. I've got a workshop foreman, and then 4 guys underneath him, and then Hannah in the office, who's effectively admin, but does a lot more than just admin. So again, although there is a structure there, I'm fully aware that when we grow again, that structure needs to change a little bit and evolve. But
is that on the operations side or the sales and marketing, or
all of the above? I think, all of the above. Because again, we try to do as much in-house as possible. I'm quite keen on keeping as much in-house, especially on operations. But I'm sure there will become a point, where maybe we will get to a point where we need to outsource some things. But I'm quite keen on keeping as much in-house as possible and just being in control of things as much as we possibly can.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess there's arguments for and against keeping everything in-house, but it really comes down to the business, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And so, yeah, it sounds like you've got a good-sized team, and they're supporting you as well, which is really good.
It is.
I mean, if you could, I know you kind of touched on it in your introduction at the beginning of this podcast, but what do you really specialize in doing? Like, what's the problem you solve?
Yeah, so again, we're in an industry that is quite niche what we do, and I would say there isn't that many people out there that do it well. There's quite a lot of people out there doing it, so fabrication and welding, making a lot of parts that we make. But I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of companies out there that are doing it particularly well. So we pride ourselves on what we do. The standard is very, very high, and I believe, I believe completely that's why a lot of people come back. They come back because the workmanship's to an incredibly high standard, and they can see that we're passionate about it as well. Like we actually, when I go and see potential clients, they can see that I'm enthusiastic. I genuinely enjoy what we do, and I genuinely want to fix people's problems. So I think what helps is that it is quite niche that we do.
I mean, describe a typical interaction with a client, or a typical transaction with a client, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So okay, I'll use last weekend as an example. So I did some networking at Silverstone Circuit. There was a historic race meeting there, and we had a client who came to us with overheating problems. So you can imagine on a hot day, engines can overheat, and he was having issues. So we made an aluminium radiator for him, but there's lots of...
and is that like for a race car?
Yes, for a race car.
Okay.
Yeah, for a race car. A lot of what we do is motorsport orientated.
Yeah. And I guess because my car's not really overheated, but then I don't go as fast as...
Exactly, Race cars are always on the edge of performance. And he was having overheating problems. So it was a case of looking at what is currently there as a package, and using our experience to go, okay, well, we can change X, Y, and Z to make that more efficient. That's going to give you a little bit more brake horsepower, a little bit more performance, and you're going to move up the grid a little bit. So that's generally what it looks like on the custom side of the business. So the more that's more niche, that's more one-off. The other side of the business, which we're probably doing 75% of now, is more small to medium-sized batch work for a lot of British sports car manufacturers. I won't name them on here, but there's, we're very proud to work for these people. And
sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Is that where like a factory-fitted option isn't the ideal option? So
yeah, there is that as well.
It.
There is that as well. So in the historic motorsport scene, a lot of these parts, they're generally not available to purchase anymore. They're not made anymore. So that's where we come in, because we can reverse engineer it and make it. Or like you said, there might be a factory option that you don't particularly want, and you want something more custom. You want something more tailored to what you want. Again, that's where we come in. That's our sort of niche, is the custom one-offs.
Is it pretty much exclusively race cars that you work with?
Not exclusively, no, not at all.
What are the applications?
Yeah, so we do a lot of... so there's the motorsport side of things. We've been hitting the supercar scene quite hard as well recently. So we get to work on some cool cars as well, to be honest. Yeah, we've had
do you actually install the components as well?
Yeah, when we're doing the prototyping, yes. Yeah. So we've had like McLarens, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches. We get to work on some cool stuff.
You've got to be pretty confident to work around.
Yeah,
I mean, if you break them, you buy them.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and in the beginning, it's obviously quite nerve-wracking, but now we're more experienced. It's a very special car, but it's just a car. It's just still nuts and bolts and metal, effectively. So the really nerve-wracking bit is when you get something really, really special in, like an old Aston Martin DB4, DB5, something like that, where you're talking it's millions of pounds worth of car. That can be a little bit nerve-wracking.
Your insurance must be like through the roof.
Yeah, we have to ring the insurance company and raise the threshold whilst the car's in our premises, until it's gone. So we generally try to keep that down to as little time as possible. But we get to work on some pretty cool cars, so it makes every day interesting. But that's the sort of niche one-off side of things. The other side of the business is more small to medium size production. So that's where a manufacturer will come to us. They might be having issues with a current supplier or whatever it might be. And they'll need a batch of, say, 50 fuel tanks making, and that's where we can come in. We do all the CAD in-house as well, so we can draw it all up on CAD, get everything laser cut, and make batches of products as well. So that's, I'd say, probably 3/4 of what we do now is small to medium size batch work for people like the British sports car manufacturers, and then there's always going to be that custom one-off part of the business as well. That makes it really, really interesting. So I think we've got to a point now where it's a really nice balance between the two.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, definitely. Yeah. You test drive the cars as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to.
What, around the track, Silverstone?
No. Well, I mean, again, that's where my personal racing background comes into it, because we actually physically get to test our own products on track. through myself racing. So at the minute I race Formula Ford 1600, which is like open wheel. So if you imagine like a Formula 1 car but without the wings, can you imagine that?
Yes, I
can.
can.
Yeah, without the front and rear wing. Yeah, it's similar to it's.
Why would you remove the wings?
Well, it actually makes the racing a lot more fun.
Right.
Yeah, because
the wings like keep it.
Yeah,
down to the ground,
that's aerodynamics. Yeah, in Formula Ford, what I race, it's more about mechanical grip. Okay. So that's what I race at the moment, and we get to, we might design a new exhaust system.
Yeah.
And then I'll go out and race and test it, and then I might go and win a race, and then that is showcasing what we do. So I'll go and win a race using our new spec exhaust system, and then all of a sudden everybody starts ringing up saying, well, we need the same spec exhaust system. Yeah.
Wait, so what are the two types? You've got mechanical grip, and is it aerodynamic?
Yes,
grip?
Correct. Yeah.
So aerodynamic grip is where you've got a wing, the opposite of a wing, pushing
the car down onto the floor.
Mechanical grip is weight.
Yeah, effectively, through the suspension. Yeah.
And the tyres, I guess.
Yeah, and the tyres, absolutely. Obviously, there's lots of variants, but that's what makes the if you follow Formula One and high-end motorsport and stuff like that, anything that's heavily reliant on aerodynamics, you'll see it's quite hard to overtake.
Yeah.
Whereas in what I do in Formula Ford, it's quite the opposite.
Is that because aerodynamic grip slows the acceleration?
No, not necessarily that. It's when you're going through a corner, the aerodynamics create like dirty air behind it, which makes the car behind lose grip. So it's very, very hard to stay behind. Whereas what I do in Formula Ford, you don't have that. It's purely mechanical grip. So you can follow around the turns incredibly close. And there's loads and loads of overtaking.
How did you get into Formula Ford?
So, I mean, this goes back to, I started go-karting when I was 12. And again, I blame my dad, to be honest with you, because I've been around motorsport since I was a baby, because he was obviously a race car engineer. He ran lots of famous race drivers throughout the years. So I've just been around it my whole life, to be honest with you. So I think it was only natural that it was going to happen at some point.
I'm just thinking of like our neighbour's kid, Cyril. He's like he's into his go-karting.
Okay.
Like, and he was just showing me like this massive patch of missing skin on his shoulder, like a few weeks ago, where he rolled his go-kart essentially, and he just went through his suit. But I guess it's quite a dangerous profession.
Yeah, it is really, to be honest. But it's exhilarating at the same time. But like I said, I started karting when I was 12 and moved into car racing when I was 18. Won our first championship when I was 18. And then we just the intention was when I was younger, was to try and make a career from it, whether it be as a Formula One driver or something at the lower levels where I could still, make a living from it. Without going into loads of detail, motorsport's such a money-orientated sport. You need a lot of money behind you to create momentum and keep moving up the formulas, and every jump it increases tenfold. It's ridiculous.
What are where is Formula Ford in like the?
Formula Ford would be the first step after go-karting.
Is that okay?
Yeah, the first step. But what you find is you have it's really nice because you have a lot of young drivers that are up and coming that are doing it. But then you have drivers like myself that have been around it for a while. So you get to test yourself against the younger up-and-coming kids, and then they obviously have the benefit of racing against a lot of experienced people as well. So Formula Ford is where I'm racing at the moment, but we did climb the ladder relatively high. I got to race against some really good drivers that have gone on and won some massive things, like John Surtees' son, Henry Surtees. I raced against him. Nigel Mansell's two sons, Greg and Leo, raced against them in Formula BMW as well. So that was interesting. I beat them most of the time. So that was quite nice. So that was the journey in motorsport. And like I said, I've always said, so long as I'm enjoying it and I'm competitive, then I'll keep doing it. And like I said, it's good for business as well, because we can test our product on the car. Yeah, and prove that it works. So, it works both ways.
Yeah, and I guess from a networking point of view, that's great, because you've probably got other other businesses that have teams as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
that's your foot in the door with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. You're in front of these people all the time. You're showcasing yourself in front of potential clients.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess if it's for a marketing based thing, then it's probably all tax deductible as well.
Yeah, quite. There's other benefits as well, of course. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But like I said, I've really enjoyed it. I still do enjoy it. That's why I still do it. I've won a couple of really big events, like quite famous events at Silverstone, which has been really good.
Okay.
And I think, to be honest, a lot of lessons that I've learned from racing has been transferable over to business as well. Like a lot of things, like the tenacity you need, the resilience, the never say die attitude. All of that stuff. Looking again, I'm sort of self-reflecting now. Looking back, a lot of those things are directly transferable, and they're probably, my experience racing is probably one of the reasons why I pushed through the hardships of business. Whereas if I hadn't have done this beforehand, then maybe I wouldn't have, maybe I wouldn't have, pushed through. So
I think, you're absolutely right. Like to add, like, we were talking about reflecting on what people have done. I sometimes find one of the biggest things that stops me really reflecting on what I've achieved is just because we're just going so fast, like in terms of it's 1,000,000 miles per hour.
It is.
And it's very, and especially when you've got a family, it can be very difficult to even get any time to yourself to just stop and think about where you were. And I think sometimes as well, for me, we changed the direction of our business a bit anyway, because we were like more of a pure accounting firm before, whereas now we do financial management for businesses as well. So we, you can't just flip the switch overnight. It's it took about probably a year just to get our model re-diverted, and then we had to build a whole new marketing infrastructure for that new business model we had, because like all the old things we did with marketing weren't that applicable. So we had to do a much more content-based approach in terms of marketing. But one of the things is, like, sometimes, like, when you reflect on your business, and you can say, okay, well, where am I compared to 2 years ago? Sometimes the answer is not what you want to hear, but it's because you're not looking at the right time period. And I've got to keep reminding myself that, because sometimes you've got to take a bit of a step back to go in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And but if I look at, where am I now compared to 6 years ago, it's great. And I think if I look at where in a year's time, if I look at, ask that question, where was I 2 years ago, it'd be really good too. But for us, and I've seen it with a lot of clients as well, they do change their business model a bit, because when they're doing stuff in business, they are learning about what works well, what doesn't work well, what they find rewarding, more importantly, because I've come across so many people that have built a successful business, but their heart's not in it, because they've overdone something they used to enjoy doing, or because they were so focused on growth, they made so many compromises in terms of the kind of people they work
fulfillment
with
and stuff like that.
Or the level of support they give someone, and they can give someone because of their time constraints. So for me, I wanted to help business owners with my accounting knowledge, but I got to a point where after that I wanted to help business owners with my business knowledge and the lessons I've learned, and also all the techniques I'd built up over the years, because I'm unusual. I'm an accountant, so what that gave me was, even early on, even in year one of my business, it gave me a level of financial control in my business that was only like a year old, with only one member of staff, which was me. It gave me a level of financial control a lot of businesses at that age couldn't achieve. So, about 2 years ago, I started asking the question, how, and that 2 years ago I did reflect, and I'm like, I was reflecting, I was thinking, am I adding the value I want to be adding? And I think we were doing it better than a lot of accountants I know. But I asked the question, I wasn't comparing myself to other accountants. I was saying, am I adding the value I want to be adding? Am I making the most of my entire skill set to help a customer? Am I going to have a really long-term impact on their life? And I couldn't say 100% I was. And I made a change. And but that came from a period of reflection. So like,
Yeah.
2 years ago, I did sit down and think, and that caused us to go in a very different direction. But I'm very excited about our direction.
Yeah.
We're meeting. We've lost some clients because they don't agree with the way we're going, because they're like, an accountant should just do tax and just do our compliance work. But we met some amazing businesses who are like, actually, accountants should be helping us with our cash flow.
Yeah.
Accountants should be helping us with our target setting. Accountants should be helping us with our planning. And you kind of had to walk away from one group to move over to the next. But but there's lots of clients have been with us for years that followed us as well, which is absolutely amazing. But the importance of reflection, I think, if I can reflect on my reflection, that was one of those really pivotal points in my business, where I actually just sat down about 2 years ago, just after COVID. COVID just put so much stuff into perspective. It highlighted to me how fragile businesses were. It highlighted to me how fragile relationships were. And it highlighted to me what I liked doing, what I didn't. And COVID was an amazing opportunity for us to support businesses through and in a meaningful way. And I came to the conclusion, well, actually, I would like to do more of this, but I needed a mandate, which meant I need to change the business model to gain that mandate to really help those businesses scale. But it makes a lot of sense. I guess, like you were saying, Michael, you haven't really had enough of a chance to reflect, but was there a pivotal time in your business where you did reflect? Would it have been...
I think, like I said, I think I haven't really done it. I've done it nowhere near enough. I think after this conversation, I probably will have some, time to reflect and look back on what we've achieved, and just have some clarity on where we're actually going. Like, what is the end goal? Because, again, personally, like, I've always got to have something to aim at. So, if I set one goal over here and we're on our way to it, I'm not going to get to that point and stop and just say, we're there. We're just gonna carry on as we are. I need to look for the next mountain to climb. Like, it's just the way I'm wired up. I think it's just I've always got to have something new to go for, some new goal, something something else to aim at.
Well, I think having a team can really push you to do that, because one thing I find is, actually, even when I'm comfortable in the business, and there's been times where I've been very comfortable, I sometimes think, actually, look at the team, like, they're probably not happy in that role forever. That person's probably not happy in that role forever.
That's a very good point.
And then you think, okay, well, that person probably wants to be a manager. That person wants to be a senior person in that role. And that means we're going to have to pay them more, which means, actually, as a business, we are going to have to grow. And it's not just about pay. It's about they're going to want to work with different types of clients on different types of stuff. So we've got to go and get those types of clients. They're probably going to want to supervise and manage people, which means we've got to have enough work to actually promote them into managerial positions. And I think, I don't know if other business owners are like that, but I think that is one of the things that does drive business owners forward, because you know what? After a while in business, it can be very easy just to make yourself comfortable, but you can become very uncomfortable again by losing key members of your team.
Absolutely,
because you're not growing at a rate that they want to grow.
And being mindful of what they think as well.
So I think the key to not stressing yourself out too much in terms of growth, because there is that pressure to grow, is get the team to do the growth for you. And that's part of our strategy here. Like, build that marketing infrastructure where we can create the right kind of growth. But it doesn't require loads and loads of effort from me to do, because otherwise, even for some of the members of our team who we need to promote over the next few years, I can achieve the growth for them. But then what? There'll be other people in the team below them who want to grow. I can't always be the one that the business relies on to grow. And I'm trying to just think ahead a bit and just say, okay, well, how can I take myself out of the growth equation? And for me, a lot of that is the marketing. I think, with the podcast, the only challenge with that is, it's all about my personal brand, whereas it's less about the business.
Yeah.
I do want to incorporate other people and the business in general into the podcast a bit more.
Yeah.
But one of the key things though is actually it's a way to gain exposure and have conversations with in a really time leveraged way. So and then create all the content that comes off the back of it. So I think every business owner has got to find their equivalent of that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I think one of the biggest things for me was creating a vision board. I don't know if you've got a vision board. Do you have a vision board at all?
I don't. I know what they are.
Yeah. So I created a vision board a couple of years ago, and that's helped me create clarity on what I actually want out of life in general as well as business.
What's on your vision board?
Oh, lots of things. Yeah, lots of things. Things like where I want to travel.
Where do you want to travel?
Financial targets, things like that. Well, I'm going to be 40 next year, so I'm planning to go to the Maldives. I've always wanted to go to the Maldives.
Amazing. I'm going to be 40 next year as well.
Oh, really?
Actually. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Fantastic. So that's what I'm planning on doing there. Obviously, being around race cars a lot, I've got some dream cars. So there's two that I'm going to build. One I've already begun building.
Will it be Formula Ford?
No, not a race car. It's going to be for the road. It's a very famous car, but it's for the road.
Yeah.
So I've already begun building that. So again, there's some material things which is absolutely fine.
Are you restoring it or just building it from scratch?
No, building it from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a branded car, is it? It's just going to be
it's a replica of a very famous race car.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So that's going to be
interesting. But it'll be roadworthy as well.
It'll be roadworthy, yeah. I'll come down here and take you out. Yeah.
That'll be amazing.
Yeah, and your team as well. Yeah. Yes,
well,
I'll take them out. Yeah.
We'll have to take turns, I guess.
So yeah, obviously, and having clarity on why I'm doing certain things as well. Like why am I pushing myself so hard? Like really thinking about why I'm doing this. And again, I've got it all written down and stuff like that. Like one of the big drivers is my 9-year-old son. I want him to see that you can dream big. Like I didn't come from a privileged background. We wasn't poor by any imagination, but it certainly wasn't a privileged upbringing. And I want to show him that you can become something from nothing. Like if that's what you want to do, it's possible, and to dream big. Being a great example to him, that's a massive driver for me. And another one is proving to myself that I'm capable of doing it. Because again, I've never been driven by wanting to prove myself to anybody else. Like, okay, it might be nice to, in 10 years' time, look back at the doubters and go, well, I told you so. That probably would be nice, but that's not the main driver for me. The main motivation is to prove to myself, within myself, that I'm capable of doing it. That I'm capable of creating a business that provides opportunities for people to grow. Like I said, training apprentices, and just providing a good level of life for everyone that's surrounding me. Really, to be honest.
What kind of apprentices do you want to train?
Welder fabricators. Yeah, definitely.
Is that the same one you did?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Just because I feel like there's a real shortage. Yeah. And it'd be nice to give a couple of young people,
So if there's potential candidates watching this,
absolutely, then reach out.
How are they going to reach out to you?
Absolutely, reach out. Give us a call, email, visit the website. I said to Hannah before I come on here that I'd plug the web shop as well, because she's just created the web shop. So go to www.apfab.co.uk.
That's it. And we'll stick that in the description as well.
That's great. Yeah, and just reach out to us. I'd love to be able to create opportunities for some young people to have a great future ahead of them. Definitely.
Amazing. Yeah. So you've got your vision board, so it's got some personal elements to it, like the car that you really want. Yeah. It's got the holiday you really want. Yeah. What else do people put on vision boards?
You can have relationship goals, money goals, health goals. There's many. Yeah.
And then how do you tie that back into your business? Like, I guess if you want those things, you need money to be able to go to the was that Mauritius?
Maldives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's
money to build a car.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And then so you can
it's all connected. Yeah, like I'm doing this because I would like to achieve this in my life, and that's why I'm making the sacrifice now. Because undoubtedly there's some things that if I was working for somebody, some of these things would be almost unattainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess actually one of the things you got to do professionally so you can achieve those personal goals is actually make sure the business can run without you for a period of time.
Absolutely, 100%.
Do you have are you trying to completely eliminate yourself, or are you just
not completely because I really enjoy it. To be honest with you, I enjoy the actual business side of growing the business. I enjoy that as much as I do manufacturing parts. Like, I still enjoy, if we get a supercar and I get to manufacture an exhaust system for it, like, I get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Yeah.
A lot of enjoyment. But on the flip side, I really enjoy coming and doing things like this. I enjoy going to see my business coach. I enjoy going to seminars just as much. And I'm getting to that point now where I realise that I do need to scale back a little bit on the manufacturing and let my team take control of it so that I can speed up the growth. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And okay, that makes a lot of sense. What would you say the toughest thing that you've been through in business was? I mean, you mentioned COVID earlier.
Yeah, COVID was obviously it was a tricky time for everybody, obviously, but it was very strange times, that's for sure. But I'd say just understanding how to manage people effectively was quite a big thing as well.
Did you have some bad experiences?
No, not necessarily, no, but it's something that was completely out of my comfort zone. Like, when you start a business and it's just you, it feels strange when you employ people and they start working for your business. It did to me anyway. It just felt a bit uncomfortable, a bit, it just felt a bit unusual, like, and it took a little while to really understand, like, how best to get the best out of everyone that's working for you, really. The
leadership is a very hard skill to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And
do you believe it's a skill you have to learn?
Absolutely. I don't think it's a character trait you're born with. I think it's something that's learned, definitely,
It's a level of consciousness as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But through experience as well. You've got to experience it. And again, it's something that I know it's an area that I need to improve upon a lot as well. I know there's lots of areas that I need to improve upon, but again, it's all part of the challenge, isn't it? It's all part of the challenge. But I think the hardest part is yet to come, to be honest. Our next stage of growth is going to be the hardest thing I experience through business, that's for sure. I just know it's going to be.
What do you think
the
next stage is? And
it's certainly going to be. In about 12 to 18 months' time, we're going to be moving premises. One way or another, we are moving to a bigger place, and what comes with that is rising costs and everything else. So the transition from where we are now to somewhere twice as big is going to be quite a difficult one.
You're going to have to grow into it.
I'm going to have to grow into it. I'm going to have to invest in more equipment. I'm going to have to invest in more people. That's going to be a massive moment in our business journey, to be honest with you. But who knows? in 5 years' time, we might talk again, and it actually went really well, and we're growing again. Who knows where the end is? Because I certainly don't. I'm keeping a very open mind to it, to be honest.
Do you feel you could do a lot more work if you had a bigger workshop?
100%, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
But that means your sales and marketing.
I've had to physically slow things down with regards to sales and marketing and things like that, because we're so busy as we are now. We're just coping with it. If I went out now and gained 2 or 3 more, repeat clients, that puts a lot of extra work our way. We would physically struggle to keep up with demand. So I don't want to put ourselves in that position. So I want to make sure that we're in a position to be able to meet their demand before I go searching for them. So it's, like I say, you just got to do things in the right order, haven't you? It's a tricky one because I really want to go after them, but at the end of the day, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot by making myself look silly by putting all this effort into gaining these new clients and then not delivering on time or whatever it might be. Something goes wrong and I end up looking silly. So you've got to be very, very careful.
That's a really important one, actually, because I guess your reputation takes years to build.
Yes, and it can be shot overnight.
Yeah. And I think a lot of business owners, thankfully, a lot of business owners I'm working with at the moment are very aware of that.
Yeah.
It's good that people are ambitious and they want to grow at a certain rate, but actually, the importance of just understanding why you need to bring the supply chain and the infrastructure with you to do that, because actually, and also when you're, the other challenge can be like, if you grow too fast, the cash flows don't keep up either.
Absolutely.
And you can end up making some very poor decisions just because you're under that cash flow pressure.
And I'm very mindful of that as well. Yeah. So I'm very, very mindful of that. So I know there's some really big decisions ahead where they've got to be smart decisions. Yeah. I've got to take my time and make the right ones.
Yeah, I mean, even with a team, a team takes a while to build up, but then they can be lost quite quickly.
Yes.
Just because if they lose faith in those decisions.
Exactly.
So.
But it's my job as a business owner to show them that that this is that this is the place to be. There's always gonna be options to grow. It's always it's my job to make sure it's a fun environment to work in, where everybody feels part of a team and feel fulfilled as well. There's lots of things that you've got to do to keep everybody happy and keep everyone on side. I think I do a relatively good job of that. I think that's one of my strengths. We try to go out and do sort of team building exercises and things like that. We go because we're all into motorsport and stuff like that, really. So we all go like simulator racing and stuff like that. So it's I think that's super, super important as well.
Okay, absolutely amazing. And I guess we're coming to the end of the podcast, but what would be really good to understand is what advice would you give to someone who's starting up in business and wants to follow in your footsteps?
I think, the morning I had this morning, I'd say don't bother. But no, I think in reality, just do your research. Speak to a lot of people that have been there and done it, and people that are going through the process now to fully understand what's going to be required. And understand that if you want to go down this road, then you've got to understand the sacrifices that are going to need to be made. And if you're happy to do that, if you're happy to make those sacrifices, then absolutely go for it. But I'd say there's absolutely no, there's no shame. There's no shame in working for somebody. There's no shame in working for somebody. You could be a really successful entrepreneur where you're you become very successful within somebody else's business. That's a much easier path to go down. But I'd say no, if deep down, if you really want to go and do something, I think you've just got to make the jump and do it. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen?
I sometimes do wonder if I knew how hard it was going to be when I started out.
You probably wouldn't do it.
Exactly. So I mean, the power of delusion. I guess was it Stephen Bartlett? He talks about the power of delusion a lot. Maybe I kind of agree with that. Yeah. It's like, don't do your research. That's not the advice I'd give.
And I'd also say it's a saying I heard most recently as well is. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So you've got to put in the graft. You can be the most talented in whatever you do, but if you're not willing to match that talent with serious hard graft, you're still not going to make it. Yeah, you're still not going to make it. Yeah, you've got to do both. Really you've got to do both. Yeah,
that's really good. Actually, sorry, what was that saying again?
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That's very original. Yeah. And actually, another good one I've heard is the pain pushes until the vision pulls.
Yeah. So love that. Yeah. If you ever come to my workshop, we've got half a dozen quotes, because I'm big on personal development. Quotes on the wall. Yeah, lots on the wall. Yeah.
You know what though? One thing I'd just say about your comment earlier is like about doing your research. You're absolutely right. So I didn't mean to make light of it in the sense like you need that delusion. But actually, one thing I agree is you got to do your research on your industry.
Yeah.
And understand the opportunities and the weaknesses in that industry. But I guess if you do your research on business in general, you've got to understand the quality of the author as well, because there's so much stuff on the internet.
There's so much information. There's all
stories. And you can't let them put you off.
No, definitely not. No, definitely. That's why I'd physically go and speak to people that have actually done it, been there and done it, or going through the process of doing it. Like rather than just watching someone on YouTube. Like physically go and meet some people. That are doing it, and they'll find people that you can trust. You can trust their word. You can trust their judgment. That will just tell you the brutal truth, to be honest. But yeah, absolutely, 100%. If you feel deep, if you genuinely feel deep inside, this is what I want to do, and I'm willing to make the sacrifice, I'm willing to go through the pain, then absolutely go for it without a shadow of a doubt. But you've just got to understand that it's a really long game. Like these things that you see online, I don't know, buy this course and I'll make you you'll be rich in 60 days. Rubbish. It's an absolute load of rubbish. It's a long game. And
you know what? I signed up to something a bit like that, where it was like a 3-month course.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, I'm almost getting to the point where I've finished it.
Yeah.
But you know what? I get why people advertise things as 3-month courses. If you say to an entrepreneur, look, we're going to get you to where you want in 2 years or 3 years, they're probably not, they probably won't take it up. But the other side is like, what was in that 3-month course was incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen to the time frame I wanted. Yeah. But the other side is I'm a bit of a slow learner, so I will do stuff, but then I might not do it the way I'm supposed to do it.
That's fair enough. I'm similar when I read books. Like I generally have to read a book twice to fully take out all of the lessons from it.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very similar. But personal development's massive as well. Absolutely massive, especially today, because the modern day is so competitive. Whether you like it or not, you're competing against everybody else. So if you can find any strategic advantage, then you've got to take it.
That's very good advice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure having you on here. So thank you. Yeah, thanks. And everyone, you've been listening to the Unrelenting Drive podcast. So keep tuned for further episodes.